Hey everybody, I am Scott Stanton, the original Tombstone tourist, and today we are a long way from home. We're in Dover Cemetery in the town of Dover Foxcroft in Maine. Now, why are we here? And who the heck has this massive mausoleum out in the middle of freaking nowhere? None other than Sir Harry Oakes. Who's Harry Oakes? Great question. So his family was well-to-do in this town, and he had a really wonderful childhood. And then he went to medical school down in Syracuse. And he dropped out after a year, I believe. And he dropped out, he told his classmate, I just want to make $1 million. And what did he do? He became a gold prospector. He went all over the world. He went to Alaska first, then he went to Australia, then he went back to California. He had the gold fever, and then finally he hit it rich in Northern Ontario. He hit a vein that some estimate was 2 miles long and 4 feet in section, and that was just one of the veins. That mine was producing $60,000 a day in 1920s money. Absolutely insane. Well, after a while, Harry, now being the richest man in the Americas, got tired of paying 85% Canadian tax. So what did he do? He went to the Bahamas, which had a zero tax because it was an outpost. It was nothing. It's not, Nassau, Bahamas is nothing like it was in the 1940s. And there was 40,000 locals that lived there. And the politics was run by the Bay Street Boys, okay? Now, what did he do? He poured all that money that he was saving, and he rebuilt the airport. He purchased the British Colonial Hotel, which Karen and I stayed at. If you watch the other video, you can see it. It's a gorgeous hotel, and they have a statue of him in the lobby. He built a golf course, a country club, and then when he wanted to hire locals for the jobs, they didn't have the skills in service trade or anything like that. So he built training centers and colleges. And he brought the locals up so they'd earn a really good standard of living. Okay? Sounds like everything's perfect. Oh, Oaks Park in Nassau, Bahamas. There's a huge memorial to him. Here it is. So now you're going, Scott, that's all fascinating. What, another rich guy spending his money? We really don't give a rip. Sir Harry Oakes is known as having the single most notorious unsolved murder in the 20th century. Okay? Now, imagine it's July 1943. Sir Harry Oakes has dinner with 3 other people. One of them is Harold Christie. Remember that name later. So sometime in the night of July 7th or 8th, everybody had left except for Harold Christie. Sometime during the night, he was brutally beaten. He was stabbed 4 times with an ice pick in the head. He was put back into his bed, and he was doused with insecticide. They tried to light him on fire, and then they doused the curtains with petroleum and tried to light those on fire. But you got to remember, there's no air conditioning. Everybody let their windows open, and you couldn't get a flame. So, next morning at 7 a.m., Harold knocks on the door. Harold was only 18 feet away. His door was just literally right next door. He didn't hear anything, allegedly, during the night. He tries to rouse him. He looks in the door, goes, oh my God, he's dead. So he calls his brother Frank first. Then he calls the Duke of Windsor. The Duke of Windsor at the time was the governor of the island of the Bahamas, Nassau, Bahamas. And you might remember him as Edward VIII, and he married Wallis Simpson and had to abdicate the throne. And he turned out to be a real piece of work. He was a traitor. He gave secrets to the Germans during World War II. He was a Nazi and a Nazi sympathizer. And so Winston Churchill said, you can't do any damage over in the Bahamas. Well, it turns out he actually did. So the Duke of Windsor said, hey, don't call the police. Well, the cat was already in the bag. This became worldwide news instantly. And so what did he do? Edward, former Edward, Duke of Windsor do? he calls up Miami and he gets 2 hack detectives that he knew personally. They fly out, but they left their fingerprint equipment behind. They were like 14 hours late to the game when they got there. The body had not been moved. And if you know anything about the Bahamas and the humidity, everything rots, living, dead, it doesn't matter. It rots very quickly. All the evidence was degrading. So after they landed and they had a private meeting for 2 hours with the governor, the Duke, they decided to arrest Alfred de Mornay. Now, Freddie, as he's known, was a playboy. He was also married to Sir Harry's daughter. She was 18, he was 35 or something like that. Harry didn't particularly like that. These two didn't talk, they had no reason to. And people suspect that Freddie was just waiting for Harry here to pass away so he could inherit some of the money through his marriage. Well, that's a fallacy because the daughter wasn't going to see a dime until age 35. So unless Freddie was in it for the long game, he ain't getting squat. So they decided to arrest him after 36 hours, saying they had fingerprints evidence, and let's take him to trial immediately. Things didn't wait a year or 2 or 3. They happened instantly. After a 3-week trial, they threw out the evidence. The judge said, "You aren't even close. This is ridiculous." That evidence was planted. But the thing that a lot of people don't report on is after they arrested Freddie, the police, not a crime scene or anything, came in and scrubbed everything. They washed the walls, the carpeting, because there was huge amount of blood in the hallway. And it was just insane. This would never happen today. So all the evidence was gone immediately. So after Freddie's found innocent, the police said, okay, well, we tried. And basically what they tried to do is pin it on one guy. It didn't work. So they just said, well, that's all fine and good. So the question remains, who murdered Sir Harry Oakes? Well, let's talk about the suspects. Okay? Well, what was happening in the Bahamas at the time? They had no gambling, and they were used by Meyer Lansky and the New York gangs, mob, to run rum through and other alcohol to avoid taxes and all that great stuff. Also at the same time, Meyer Lansky was building casinos up in Cuba. So a lot of people say the mob came in and rubbed them out. Plausible, but probably not. Okay, because it was very hard to get a casino license in there. There was just no way. There was private card games and that was it. The whole island and Harry Oakes did not want it. And Harry Oakes owned 33% of the island and wielded a lot of power. So who else? Well, it was 1943. Nazis were the tide was turning in World War II. They were jumping off to the Bahamas to shelter their money and do money laundering, and Harry didn't like that. So is it possible that some, German expats, Nazi sympathizers were trying to get rid of him? Maybe, but not probable. I mean, these are just money laundering people. They wanted to keep under the radar. Duke of Windsor. Did he have a reason? Yeah, he had a reason. But the Duke doesn't get his hands dirty. He facilitates a really bad investigation, and I believe that's what his role was, to facilitate a bad outcome so it takes away from the people that actually did it, so the Duke can keep pushing legislation to land grab away from the locals and things like that, because he needed to line his pocket. He needed the Bay Street boys and their money machine going. And by the way, they were all white. They made all the rules. And the Bahamians were all African American, and they were the worker bees. I don't think the Duke was directly involved, but he helped it out. That kind of leaves the Christie brothers. You have Harold, who was there that night, and you have Frank, his brother. Now, what would be the motive? The motive would be Harold borrowed a lot of money. We're talking millions of dollars in the 1940s. Millions and millions of dollars to build and create this real estate empire. But he did a couple of deals where he didn't throw back Harry his cut and didn't pay Harry back his loan. Harry was getting pissed off. And he said, screw you. I'm moving now to Mexico. That's the new frontier. And he was in the process of moving his money to Mexico, and a lot of it did move to Mexico. But remember, he still owned a third of the island in real estate and things like that. He was becoming way too powerful. So the case remains unsolved, but if you want my editorial knowledge, if you want my take on it, here's what's happened. He called in the loans, Sir Harry. He called in his loans. The Christie brothers did not want to go back to being just two-bit real estate agents selling condos or whatever they did in the 40s. And as a murder investigator once told me, when you're looking at a murder, there's no such thing as a coincidence. No. When you've got these things starting to line up, for example, Harold told the staff to go away for the evening. The storm is coming in. Come on, the Bahamas has storms every night. And Harold lives just 2-3 blocks over from Harry. So, but he stayed the night, and the other two drove all the way to the other side of the island without a problem after dinner. So that doesn't make sense. Number two, are you telling me that Harry was brutally murdered? A horrible scene that took probably a good half hour to an hour to inflict. You heard nothing? Oh, come on, give me a frickin' break. And if Harry had called in the loans, they were broke. So you have to remember, Sir Harry was a big guy. He was a miner all his life. His hands were huge and rugged. He worked for a living. He was the epitome of a self-made man. So I don't think one person like Freddie could kill him. That's ridiculous. That guy was 60 some years old. He could still kick your butt 3 days to Sunday, you know. And so I think both Harold and his brother Frank were involved, directly involved. That night, a boat arrived from Florida, and I believe there were a couple of mobsters / hitmen that were ready to assist. They didn't care. That was their job. They just came in, did it. There you go. I believe those two, and he was killed upstairs where all the blood was in the hallway. Here's a picture. A horrible crime scene that was never fully investigated because they didn't want to find out who did it. Then they put him in the bed, but they put him in the bed the wrong way, so he didn't die there. He was killed somewhere else. And the blood flow and the splatters were just people throwing things and smearing walls. They tried to make it look like a robbery. They failed miserably. It was truly a crime scene. But when you think about it, it's so horrific. And ice picks, you know, and the Meyer Lansky gang and the Genovese family and Murder Incorporated, that was a standard way to disable your person that you have a hit on. So I'm thinking you have a couple of strong men, then the two brothers, they held Harry down, they killed him, they put him in the bed. And you know what happened? After Freddie was acquitted, he was forced off the island. They didn't want him around anymore. Chief of police, that was a witness to where the comings and going of the Christie brothers were. He was transferred to Trinidad when they found out that he was, you know, he knew where people were coming and going, and it lined with everything. A couple people were killed when they were investigating. They were told not to talk about it, and they did. And so 2, 3, 4 murders are attributed to this group, because you have to remember the Christie brothers, who are now H.G. Christie Real Estate. It is one of the largest, most prestigious real estate groups in the world. And they build compounds and estates where billionaires try to keep away from the millionaires. That's how big of a group they are. And they're still in business today. The son of the son of the son of Freddie, or Frank Christie, runs it today. And they're a huge operation. So in the end, this is just speculation on my part. But turns out a lot of people, you know, The quickest way to solve a murder is a straight line. And there are just too many coincidences not to put the Christies right in the middle of it. But tell you what, come out to my website, The Tombstone Tourist. I have amazing documentaries, and you really got to take some time, because these documentaries aren't 5 minutes. These are hour to 2 hour long documentaries about this most infamous murder of this, it was unfortunate for Harry. Oddly enough, they never found the money in Mexico. Christie's never paid their loan back. So it's easy to be rich when you're working with other people's money that you have no intention of paying. And you're going to find out all sorts of stuff. But let me know in the comments in this YouTube video and other places if you agree with my analysis. Until then, I'm Scott Stanton. I'm the original Tombstone Tourist. Thank you, and I'll see you on the road.